welcome to this meeting of Addictive Eaters Anonymous. My name is Ibrahim and I'm an addictive eater. Hi everyone. If we could start the meeting with a moment of silence and then I'll read the preamble. Addictive Eaters Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from addictive eating. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop addictive eating. There are no dues or fees for AEA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AEA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other addictive eaters to achieve sobriety. If I could just ask everyone to turn off their mobile phones or put them on silent, please. And we are going to listen to Sian share her story. And Sian's going to share for about 15 minutes.
Thank you, Ibrahim. My name is Sian and I'm an addictive eater. Just want to take the opportunity to thank all those involved putting on this workshop this morning. It was absolutely wonderful. Really a privilege to hear the speakers this morning as well, to know that this is where I belong, be able to identify with others. And I just feel really privileged to be part of a growing fellowship that is Addictive Eaters Anonymous, so I'm delighted to be here. I want to, I suppose, skip over a lot of my childhood, my growing up years, mostly because a lot of it still, even to this day, is a fog for me. You know, it's really hazy. You know, sometimes my parents will say, "Do you remember when we went this trip?" Or "Do you remember when we went and had this party?" And I don't remember, you know, I don't remember these things, but I remember just always being obsessed by food. And if I was going to any of these occasions, that was my primary focus. From as far back as I could remember, I wanted to eat in secret. I stole food. I grew up on a housing estate, in a housing estate, and I can remember, you know, when I was that little bit older, not by a huge amount now, but probably about 5 or 6, when I was allowed to go out and play by myself without adult supervision. There's no way that my parents knew that I was leaving that housing estate and going off to different shops to buy food and coming back and sitting in a local field but close to that housing estate and just eating on my own from as young as 5, 6 years of age. And I would have had all of that planned and worked out in my head, you know, of how I was going to get there and how I was going to get the money to pay for all the food. And a little bit later, you know, we also lived near, at another time, we also lived near an abandoned car park. And that used to be the place that I would go to eat. You know, I'd go to we used to live near a shop and a takeaway, and they were side by side. And I would go to the shop and the takeaway, and then I'd go back to this car park. And, you know, and it was an abandoned car park, and there'd be homeless people living in this car park, you know, and it was surrounded by a forest. And none of that frightened me. I can remember just having the fear of, I hope I don't get caught. You know, I hope I don't get caught. So my eating, you know, I did lots of very strange things with food, you know, that just became my normal, like storing food in my bedroom, as I mentioned already, stealing food. I used to eat all my packed lunch on my way to school. You know, on my way to school, I'd eat all my packed lunch. And the patience of those that I would have hung around with in school grew very thin when I would say, I forgot my lunch money. You know, can I borrow money off you? And I'd never pay it back. Or I'd say things like, I forgot my lunch, and, they would give me theirs, or they would give me some of theirs. And I remember particularly being really embarrassed because I'd see them sitting in the canteen eating their chips, and I'd watch the chips like a hawk, and I can remember sitting there licking my lips and them all laughing, and I didn't even know that I was licking my lips, and they were like, "Would you like some?" But the majority of my eating was done in secret. And needless to say, that kind of eating and the way I continued to eat, I put on an awful lot of weight, and I'm small, so I wasn't able to ever hide it very well. But it was in my teens that over the course of a summer, I started to diet, and I started to exercise. I didn't change the way I ate at that time, but for the first time I started to exercise, and the weight just fell off me, and I got an awful lot of attention. And I should have said that the dieting did come later, but the exercise, that was the first point. And I can remember having a very clear thought of, I can exercise and not change the way I'm eating, and so that started years and years of trying to juggle what I was eating, exercising, and then dieting later as well. And I went from somebody who just who would be eating, to restricting so much that I would just eat a slice of ham and a bit of lettuce on some cracker bread. I just went from one extreme to the other, and today I just see it all as eating. I had an obsession whereby I wanted to be thin and I wanted to eat all the time. I was constantly trying to juggle the two. And because of the amount of attention that I was getting from the weight loss, I got involved. I suppose I started socializing with a group of people that liked to party. And to keep up and to keep in with the crowd, I started drinking. And my behavior when I drank, I just loved the effect. It frightened me. Alcohol and getting drunk frightened me, but I loved the confidence that it gave me. I loved feeling like I was a part of. I thought that by socializing with this group of people, I had arrived, as Bill Wilson talks about, and so it, that kind of began my obsessions and my addictions with other substances. Later it became prescription pills because I had myself convinced I was in pain, physical pain, and I started to this day I don't know where I got those pills, whether I stole them. I'm pretty sure I convinced doctors to give them to me because I was diagnosing myself, and but I had heaps of pills that I was just taking all the time, and it was, I suppose, my behavior that it just got to a point where a family member in AA approached me and said, I think you have a problem with food. And I didn't go in there with all smiles on my face to another food fellowship. I went in kind of dragging my heels, but I had this attitude of, if I go in here for a little while, people will get off my back. But it was described this morning, I really got a sense of I'm not on my own. And to my memory, I don't remember hearing anybody at those meetings for the first 18 months with a solution as I know it today, but I certainly heard an awful lot that I could identify with. So I kept coming back, and it was through there that I ended up in a treatment centre. Which I say is a fancy word for rehab. I was in there for about 5 weeks, completely and utterly mad because I had stopped eating foods with sugar and white flour in them, and I was going to meetings, and as far as I was concerned, I was in recovery. I didn't know any different. I didn't hear anything different. And yeah, I would say that I was pretty suicidal after about 2 years, because the obsession had not left me. But I managed to be able to give a good talk, and I would I had a sense of humor where I could share at meetings and have everybody laughing at my woes and my misery. But I went traveling, and I'd say I didn't even get to Dublin Airport before I was just off the wagon. And what I mean by that is, I had picked up something, whatever it was, and I can't remember, but I just could not stop eating. I could not stop eating. And I went traveling, and I went to a meeting, and there was something describably different at this meeting that I went to. It was another food fellowship. It was about 25, well, to my memory, there was about 25, 30 people there, just with a sense of ease, a sense of calmness. There was, they talked quietly. There was no kind of loud hugging, and, there was just no drama. It was just a very quiet meeting, and I was very welcomed there. And I can remember being asked to share, and I said something, and hoping that everybody would laugh, and not one person out of 25, 30 people cracked a smile. And I just thought, I hope the floor just opens up. It was just this sense of, I must have described something that was, horrendous in my eating, hoping that everyone would find the humor side in it. And that was enough to really embarrass me. It was enough to really embarrass me. And at that meeting, a woman at the end came up to me, and she said to me, are you willing to go to any lengths to get well? And my first thought was, this woman hasn't even told me her name. It was the first thing that she said to me. She said, are you willing to go to any lengths to get well, dear? And I stopped and I looked at her, and I said to her, do you do something differently to what I'm doing? And she said to me, isn't that obvious? And I just remember kind of just being so disturbed, just being like, who does she think she is? She doesn't know me. But she really disturbed me, because I thought, well, what is it that she's doing that I'm not? I'm going to meetings, and, like I said, as far as I thought, I was in recovery. And after that, I don't really remember much of what she said, but she did give me her contact number, and she gave me a copy of the big book, and she said, I think she said to call her, but what she did say was, she said, why don't you stick around and see how we work this program? And I was due to fly out of that country the next day, and I remember leaving that meeting, going back to where I was staying, and just, as I said, being really, really disturbed, going to the airport the next morning, and the whole time my head screamed at me, don't get on that plane. But I got on the plane, and I opened up the big book for the first time after being around a couple of years in different fellowships. But I opened up the big book, and for the first time I started to read what was going on in my head. I couldn't identify as an alcoholic at that time, but this was the first time that I could see that this was what was happening for me, and this was my experience. And I wanted everybody that I was traveling with to read this book as well. God bless them. The guy I was going out with at the time, I gave him such a hard time because he wouldn't read the book. I had her number, and I phoned her. And the times where I would have in the past said, tomorrow I'm just going to eat this, this, and this, I wasn't able to do that. I couldn't get past 8:30 in the morning. And even if I just had an apple the next morning, my head was demented because I didn't say to myself, that's what I was going to have. I didn't know. I just completely lost the power of choice. And I'd lost the power of choice a long time prior to that, but I didn't know I had. I didn't know that. I didn't know what was right for me to eat, how much was right for me to eat, what time of the day was right for me to eat. I just didn't have a clue. And I phoned her. And I don't know if this is something that I just created in my head, but my memory is that she said to me things like, just try and enjoy what you're doing. Just try and enjoy what you're eating. And I'd hang up the phone and I'd think, I can't enjoy what I'm eating. I can't even eat an apple and be okay. And then the next kind of phone call I'd ring, I'd say things like, I think I need to come back to where I've met these people. I think I need to hear more. And she'd say, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And then the next kind of few phone calls, it was like, right, I'm coming back. I need to get on a plane. I need to come back. And then she started saying things to me like, you're going to be okay. When you come back here, you're going to be taken care of and you're going to be okay. And, and I did. And I was welcomed in those meetings, and I got to spend time with people, and I got to spend some time with some people here that are here today. And just to watch, even outside of the meetings as well, to watch people, how they just go through their day, how they have jobs, how they, I was invited into people's homes. I was picked up and taken to meetings, and then they cared for me enough that, and I'd say they were getting direction from their sponsors, but there were times where I wasn't being offered a lift to a meeting, and I'd have to get myself there, and that was just for my better good. And and I asked a woman to sponsor me, and I was just willing to follow direction. I was willing to, the fight in me was up. I was willing to do whatever I was told to do in order to get well. And it's been spoken about how addiction swaps from one substance to the next. And because I'd been around other 12-step fellowships, I had them all in different compartments. Alcohol belongs in AEA, drugs belong in Narcotics Anonymous, or food belongs in food fellowships, and I had them all in different places. And this was the first time that somebody was talking my language, and I thought, thank God, they're talking what it's like, what it's been like for me, and they're the obvious ones. I had addictions to the internet, relationships, spending money, I needed help with all areas of my life, and still do today, and I like what's been shared already. I've been relieved of that obsession and that compulsion and all those substances, and yet I still have that thinking going on, and I need an awful lot of help with my thinking and my character defects. But this program has taught me an entirely different way to live, and I don't think that it's any coincidence that I stumbled across that meeting. I really don't. I don't think I stumbled across recovery. I can very clearly remember just before I got to that meeting, writing a letter to God and saying, God, please help me. I will do absolutely anything that you're asking me to do, but don't let me put on weight. Don't let me put on weight. And and I coming to those meetings that I described, there was a girl there my age, and don't think she's part of the fellowship anymore, but I thought that if I just looked like her, if I had her sense of clothing style, if I had her job, and I was always comparing myself to other people. And I remember her stopping me outside a meeting one day, and she said, if you stick around here and do what's on offer, the day will come where you will no longer think about your weight, your size, or what you look like. And she got on her little moped and she zoomed off, and I just thought to myself, I have no idea what that must be like. And today I do, and I believe that is the grace of God. Something else has come in, and even just looking around these rooms today, we're all on this part of the hemisphere, but we're all pocketed in different places. And if we think about our own individual stories, and just having lunch there with a couple of members, that it's just no coincidence to me that we all just, are here today. I think that we've all been placed where we are. There's something bigger at work that I can possibly even begin to comprehend. So, God willing, I'll keep coming back. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Sian.